Pfizer has announced that it will sell all of its patented drugs and vaccines at non-profit prices to the world's poorest countries. The pharmaceuticals chief executive, Albert Bourla, said 45 countries would benefit, covering a total of more than 1 billion people.
There exists a tremendous health equity gap in our world that determines which of us can use these innovations and which of us cannot. With all we have learned and accomplished over the past 2 years, the time is now to begin closing this gap even more.
There's been lots of reaction to that statement. Bill Gates, who's co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, hopes other companies will soon follow suit.
Global health equity has made progress. We saw once again with COVID, we're not there. Whether it was getting the vaccines or now getting the therapeutics out, it's a lot of hard work. Some excellent things are being done, for example, with Paxlovid to make sure that's going to get out. So we're pleased to be working with Pfizer, and we're talking to the entire pharmaceutical industry about these kinds of initiatives and how we can broaden them as part of the whole ESG effort.
One of the countries that may benefit is Rwanda. Here's their president, Paul Kagame.
Pfizer's commitment sets a new standard in this regard, which we hope to see emulated by others, combined with additional investments in strengthening Africa's public health systems and pharmaceutical regulators. Accord is an important step towards sustainable health security for countries at every income level.
OK, let's get some reaction from Africa, further reaction to this. Chris Atim is a health economist based in Accra in Ghana, which is one of the African countries signed up to the Pfizer Health Accord. I
agree that it is good news, for a major manufacturer of pharmaceutical products to make this announcement. But it is, there are some concerns, in the broader picture with the COVID-19 pandemic. First of all, it comes, well after the peak of the pandemic, when now the demand for their products is, in the West, and at least in the advanced countries anyway, is well below what it was before, and now they can begin to, talk about the concerns of less developed countries.
Does that annoy you? Does that make you feel annoyed? Because also the problem will be if we have another pandemic, even if those drugs are not being sold for profit, will you have access to them in Ghana,
that is the
Rwanda?
Main question. Exactly. It's not just a cost. It's not just a question of whether they're selling them for profit. It's also when will they actually be available? Will we be put on the same pedestal, the same footing as the other countries when it comes to, the manufacture and distribution of those drugs? And that is vaccines, for that matter. And that, speaks to the broader architecture of the pharmaceutical industry globally, of which Pfizer is a major part, where they have lobbied very strongly for the TRIPS agreement under the WTO, which makes it difficult for countries like India, South Africa, Senegal to actually be able to manufacture these products, in a timely way to satisfy the needs of countries that are not being looked after. That's the point. It's not that they are competing.
Is that the solution for, as you mentioned there, for countries like Ghana, for those countries that you mentioned there, that Pfizer basically hands over the way to make these products, and then you can make them on the ground yourself. But that's not going to happen, is it?
But that's a better solution than what they are talking about. It's certainly better in terms of the equity they are talking about. They said that they are trying to address equity. But, the way to address global equity is not to say, you sell them for on a non-profit basis, but without telling us if we would be put on the same priority basis as your home countries who are demanding these drugs. And some of them even can make laws to prevent you from exporting the drugs, as we've seen before. So, it's really important that we are able to manufacture these drugs when we need them, especially on an emergency basis. The TRIPS makes that impossible, difficult at the very least, to actually manufacture them on an emergency basis. And we saw during the pandemic that we couldn't even do that,
But the drug companies would say, the likes of Pfizer, that if they did that, countries like Ghana don't have the capability to manufacture the drug at the moment, that you wouldn't be able to do it.
No, but we are in a better place when we are dealing with South Africa and India, and Senegal. Senegal has the capacity as well. And indeed, actually, if that the possibility was to even be open, I know that more countries, including Ghana, actually would step up to say we would also want to be able to manufacture this. Ghana actually talked about it. Because we are asking ourselves, suppose there are really deadly virus emerges that is ravaging our populations and as well as the West, and in a way that is really unlike, say, the COVID one. The COVID one was bad enough, but I mean, suppose it's worse than that, and people actually dying in their droves. Will we have to wait until they have satisfied their demands in the advanced countries before we actually get considered? Or can we start doing something? And the question is, what can we be capable of doing? What can we possibly be able to do on our own to start addressing the needs of our populations that enable us to actually begin to also tackle our problems on our own without having to depend entirely on the charity of the pharmaceutical companies. And charity has not been their most important or their strongest suit in their history.
The pharmaceutical companies would say that they are businesses, they need to make money, and that it is governments that have to sort out those problems. They make the drugs, they should be able to sell them at whatever price they want. So in a way, Pfizer could say, this is a very bold step that they're taking.
I wouldn't deny that as far as that is concerned, as a manufacturing company. But what I'm talking about is a broader architecture in which it's not just, they are not the only players. I mean, when we talk about the health equity and the problems, of the world, of populations, in our kind of countries, we are talking about the architecture in which both these companies and their governments also have responsibilities. And in governments in particular have responsibilities. And just as we do have responsibilities for our population, where we must look at not just the profits of pharmaceutical companies, but also the lives of people, in which case they may, and there are circumstances in which governments can override the concerns of the private companies to make sure that lives are saved.
Chris Atim there with his reaction to that announcement by Pfizer.